Hello and welcome to this episode of Let's Talk. My guest is Jonny Clark, the National Director of YWAM in Ireland. And in this episode, he talks about reconciliation and the need for truth, mercy, justice, and peace.
You know, I use the definition of reconciliation, that reconciliation is a place where truth, mercy, justice, and peace meet. And a lot of people want to have reconciliation where it's just all about mercy, you know, or just peace. Let's just be at peace. But you can't really have peace if you haven't dealt with any issues of injustice or you never tell the truth. But it's also not just truth alone or just justice alone. It has to be these four elements coming together. John Paul Lederach is the guy who came up with that definition. And he uses that verse in Psalm 85. Truth and mercy have met together, justice and peace have kissed. And he said, you've got to have these kind of four elements. And I sometimes think that different people involved in reconciliation, the peace process, kind of focus on different elements more strongly. You know, I mean, I think Eugene was a very strong advocate for truth being told. You know, we can't move on totally unless we have some kind of level of truth being accepted and brought into the public sphere. Beryl, who's in the film, Beryl Quigley, she's mercy all over, you know, it's just deep compassion for people, even those who killed their husband. And I think part of what I was trying to do in the film is show that reconciliation is not a nice, you know, Americans would call it cookie cutter, simple formula. It's messy and complicated, and people are at different places on the journey. Even with forgiveness, some are forgiven. For others, they wouldn't say they're forgiven, but they're on a journey of forgiveness or on a journey of reconciliation. And usually they're somewhere in those truth, mercy, justice, and peace kind of bits.
You've talked about a couple of people that were in the film, and one of the other elements was the Shankill bombing. Again, I lived in Belfast at that time, and I remember walking around in West Belfast, taking the dog for a walk and not knowing whether I'd be able to get home, whether I might have been a target at some point. That was the tension that was there. Tell us a little bit about the story of one of the victims of the Shankill bombing. How did that connect to what you were doing?
In the film Guardians of the Flame, we interview Alan McBride, who's kind of become quite well known over here because he's been very outspoken about our need for our politicians especially to lead the way in showing us what it looks like to be good neighbors. And of course, sadly, our politicians don't ever do anything like that, you know, and the last thing they seem to embody in many ways, sadly, in our divided, fractured society is how to be good neighbors. You know, it's usually how to win one over on the other side, get one over. So the Shankill bombing, I wanted to include that story partly because I had lived in the Shankill for 8 years. I remember shortly after I moved there, I went for coffee or breakfast in what was then called, it's now closed, the Shankill Road Mission. It was like a restaurant, cafe kind of place. A lovely place. But I remember talking to a couple who were in a table next to me, and much older couple, pensioners. And they started to tell me about the Shankill bombing and how the street had never been the same since that, and how it had deeply affected the community. And you realize, you know, in the Shankill bomb, you know, 9 people were killed, but the ripple effects of sadness lasted much longer than that. And Alan McBride tells his story in the film about growing up in the Westland estate, which is, you know, quite close to the Shankill. It's a 10-minute drive away. It was quite similar type of loyalist estate, and he had a wife, Sharon. They got married and were very much in love. And Sharon used to work 1 day a week at her father's fish shop business on the Shankill, and she wasn't due to work that day, but her sister asked her to change, so she went in and worked there. And the IRA had received kind of intelligence, possibly again collusion from the security forces, that loyalist paramilitaries were meeting above the fish shop that day. And so they went in and planted a bomb in the fish shop, and it went off early, and innocent people were just blown to bits who were doing nothing other than standing in a queue waiting to buy some fish, you know. Or Sharon McBride, Alan's wife, and her father were all killed. So Alan tells a story of coming, finding the scene, being taken to the Mater Hospital and waiting, and there were all these other families there. And finally, he was the last one to be told, and the doctor came out with a ring and said, "Do you recognize this ring?" And it was his wife's engagement ring. And he said, "Yes, that's my wife's engagement ring." And the doctor said, "Well, this was taken from the body of a young woman that is dead." And so that story, and the story of the whole bombing is just really tragic. And it showed in the film, I think we showed people who were meticulously targeted for killing, like Beryl's husband, but also Alan McBride's wife, who was just randomly caught up in a bomb that went wrong. And so Northern Ireland is full of people who were either very directly bereaved as a result of the Troubles, or indirectly they were friends or relatives of victims. And some of those people were just random people, punters walking along the road, you know, caught in the crossfire. And somehow we have to pick up the mess of that, you know. And so the film, we're trying to tell their stories, using the power of their stories to get a message across.
We have more on the way, so please subscribe to this channel and check out the link below if you'd consider becoming a patron to help us keep making more content. Thanks for watching.